Hi all, this is Nish from Professional Visa and Education Services, and I have with me Kosal. Look, today we're going to talk about the recent changes in relation to international student visa, subclass 500. Mainly, I'm going to go into the topic that has changed. So first thing first, what are we going to start with, Kosal?
We'll start up with the English language change.
Sure.
So I think they have released the new instrument with the new English language requirement. If you want to take us through that, Nish.
Absolutely. Now look, the new changes in terms of the English requirements. So look, the things in terms of the foundation hasn't changed much. Like the arrangements that was there previously is still in place. It's just the scoring that has changed, okay? So I just want to quickly talk about this, the IELTS or equivalent. Like when I'm talking about the English language test today, I'll be mainly focusing on IELTS or equivalent. So let's just focus on the IELTS for now, okay? So any English language test for academic purpose is valid for 2 years. So that hasn't changed. That has always been the case, you know. So, so really the validity of the English language test is 2 years. And then the minimum score. Now the minimum score, let's talk about the minimum score, because I think a lot of people are confused about the minimum test score, right? Like, for example, if someone wants to come and study ELI course on its own,
Yeah.
so really they don't need to satisfy the English, you know what I mean? Yeah. So if the course that are applying for is predominantly just ELI course, then there is no English requirement. And also there's no English requirement for postgraduate research courses, for example, you know what I mean? So really it's only if someone is applying for direct course starting from certificate 4 level and upwards, then they need to satisfy the English level, right? or if they have a ELI course as a starting course, and then they have principal course tacked on like a package, then that's when we need to actually satisfy the English language test.
Right. So
Yeah.
on that, what would be the lowest score that the applicant can have it in order to get enrolled in the student
So
visa
what's the
application?
question is obviously what's the lowest score that you need to have in order to apply for a student visa? Well, starting with a 5 overall, you know what I mean? So if you have a 5 overall in your English, IELTS or equivalent test, that has to be, now we have to basically think about, are you applying for ELI course or are you applying for a course, a main course? Then obviously if you have an overall 5, then you need to have at least 20 weeks of ELI course tacked on with your principal course.
So there is a catch.
There is a catch. So you have overall 5, then you have 20 weeks of ELI course, then you can proceed with your principal course. And again, depending on the principal course, for example, if you're doing Bachelor's of Nursing or something like that, that has a caveat. So of course, like that is not the the college requirement, but it's more of a authority requirement. You know, it's coming for NMBA or NMAC and all that kind of stuff. But then apart from that exceptions, like usually the general rule of thumb is if you have overall 5, you can apply for an international student visa for Australia, but that has to be tacked on with 20 weeks of ELI course followed by the principal course, right? And then if you have scored 5.5 overall, then you can tack on 10 weeks of ELI course, then you can do your principal course. If the overall score is 6, then you don't have to do the ELI course, so you can directly go into the main course if the university or the education provider is happy with that particular minimum test for that particular course.
Right. So the whole understanding is if you have 6 overall in IELTS or equivalent, you would not require to get into any ELI course of any weeks, but as long as if you have less than 6, anything above 5, you would need to tack that on with the ELI course.
Course.
Now, also, if you could guide us through some exemption where the applicant would not require to provide the English language requirement.
Yeah, sure. Now the applicants are not required for English language test if they are citizen of Canada, New Zealand, Ireland, UK, or US. This hasn't changed. So if they're citizen of that particular countries, they don't have to sit down or demonstrate that they have a competent English to be able to apply for any course in Australia.
Right.
So moving on. Look, if this is like very rare for people to think about this, but again, if you have done 5-year studies in any of these countries, including Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, Ireland, and UK, and US, then you don't have to satisfy the English as well. So in terms of the English language test, I just wanted to reiterate the conclusion is, it's just that overall score has changed. Now the other arrangements is still the same. And mainly what I want to talk about is if you apply for a student visa extension in Australia, if you're onshore students and if you're applying for the student visa extension, now there is exemption if you have actually passed a certain course in Australia before. Now minimum certificate 4 or above, and then if you have completed a significant part of the course. And when you say significant, the rule of thumb is 51%. So 51% is significant. So if you have passed a significant part of the course, then you don't have to actually satisfy the English language test as well, because the philosophy is you've been able to pass this course because you had the English competency to be able to graduate or pass this course so far, you know what I mean?
Right, so this is similar to what they had back in the previous English language requirement.
100%. This hasn't changed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
whatever the 51% significant part of the course is still there as an exception. Like you don't have to actually go and sit down for the test again. If you're already studying a course, you just need to extend your visa. Then all we ascertain is whether or not you have actually finished 51% of the course. Now, how do we calculate 51%? So total unit that you have completed divided by the total units that you need to complete, or the total units that you have, that gives you the percentage.
Right, so the only main thing that has changed in the English language requirement would be the score.
Yes.
To understand.
So just the score overall. So I think with the Southeast Asian community, I think with the English has never been a major issue if you really think about it. So I don't know if the international students should be really worried about these changes at this point in time. Although a lot of medias, a lot of social media contents has sort of implied that it's particularly challenging now to apply for a student visa. Well, not really in relation to English language tests. So I think we can look into that. Now, if you're from non-English sort of background and you haven't been doing your education in English language before, then obviously you have a choice to apply for ELICOS as a standalone product without having to sit down for any English test. Or then you try your best, try to get at least 5, then you have 20 weeks of ELICOS, and then you can do your principal course in Australia anyway.
But also with that part, usually the university and colleges, they do have the pre-requirements with majority of the courses. So I believe someone's coming for undergraduate or postgraduate degree would at least need to meet the requirement of 6 overall to the bare minimum before they deal with the immigration.
That's right. So the understanding is without having, if you don't want to worry about having to do your ELICOS, like try to get overall 6, and then obviously you go and check with the individual education providers and the requirements in order to for you to get enrollment in the colleges.
Right, so let's just move into the second part. So where while doing the races, what I found is they have introduced this new direction 108. So would you want us to give us a quick idea on what that new direction is all about?
Sure. The direction 108, and I don't want to confuse the viewers by just talking about the numbers, but again, there has been a specific directions given by the immigration for basically for the applicants who has actually lodged the visa application before 23rd of March 2024, and the decision is pending. Okay, so this particular direction is very specific to that particular cohort of the people who is actually waiting for the visa to be approved, and then this is the people who's already applied for international student visa prior to 23rd of March. Now the direction is pretty much saying that they won't be as impacted by the new rules that's going to come, which is a genuine student test, whatever we call it in our world, is like, the direction's still same as before. Like you still have to show that, what are you going to do after you finish your course, how you're going to take this, the value of the course back home, how's it going to be relevant to your careers, and how you're going to implement it, and what are your ties for you to return back home. So again, it all ties back to that genuine temporary entry criteria that we have it in place. So this particular direction is only giving the direction to the Department of Home Affairs case officers to say, hey, I know there are big, application in limbo, because obviously you cannot implement the new directions on this application because they were lodged before the changes came into place. And the basic rule of thumb in law is the law doesn't go retrospect, it doesn't go backward, it only goes forward. So again, they have actually implemented the same sort of philosophy with these particular directions. So I guess with this particular direction, there's not much to talk about. It basically replicates the same model that we had, the same framework that we had previously.
Right. So also, just to have that clear understanding, because there are plenty of pending applications with
Yes.
the department. 15th of March, always known as the crucial date for the student visa
Yeah.
holders. I think that was the another element which this direction could come into play, but more.
I think you're right, because there's a lot
yeah.
of visa expires on 15th of March, and a lot of people have actually applied for a
Yeah.
visa extension, or they have
Mhm.
applied for a new visa after their previous
Mhm.
visa expired. So people need to understand that they will not be impacted with the new changes that we're going to talk about
Mhm.
next. That's our next big topic.
Okay.
But then they just need to understand that there's nothing has changed, or nothing will change in terms of assessing the visa application for those ones whose visa expired and lodged before 23rd of March 2024.
So they are not actually impacted with that.
No.
Now, finally, the biggest hot cake for the day.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to stay for a while.
Mhm.
So there is a new direction which has entirely changed the ZTE requirement to the genuine entry and stay requirement, or genuine student test, as what we said before. And this is new direction number 106. So if you could just quickly give us the brief overview, and then I'll try to ask you a few components where I was a little bit confused with the different elements which they have mentioned, that will help our viewers to understand it better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Look, the new direction is the direction. When I say direction, like, I don't want
Right.
the viewers to be confused about the word direction. It's basically it's the direction given by the minister to the case officer, that what sort of direction they need to follow. That, as the name suggests,
Yeah.
what direction the case officer needs to follow.
Mhm.
So basically, whatever the genuine temporary entry criteria we had it in the past, that will be kind of substituted,
Yeah.
or has been substituted
Yeah.
already, because it's past 23rd of March, by the new direction 106. So now the main component of 106 is it ties up with the migration strategy that we talked about back before end of the last year.
Yeah.
Which is how a lot of people were stressed about there's going to be some sort of restriction for people to apply for international student visa after COVID 408, or after 485 visa, things like that. And I think rather than the government coming up with a black letter law to say, sorry, you cannot apply for any international student visa, I think this particular direction is cleverly drafted to target those cohort anyway.
Yeah.
So if you look at the direction that was published, it basically targets that there will be a higher scrutiny for people who has been a previous holder of 485 visa, higher scrutiny for people who are holding a visitor visa like 600 tourist visa that we normally call, 601 electronic travel authority, and 651 e-visitor visa. So they all fall into that visitor visa category. So these are the people who are kind of highly scrutinized when they're assessing the visa application, and that's the first direction of 106.
Right, great. So just on that particular topic, I think majority of us, audience and clients who are currently after the review of last year, I think everyone has that massive confusion of, okay, so immigration will stop people of to lodge new application for a student visa, but whereas this new direction provides the idea on they will have the new more scrutinized process to look into those people who are on 485 visas or
Yeah.
any of these temporary visas.
That's right.
That's
But
right.
again, Kausal, I just wanted to be more open about this,
Yeah.
because if you really think about, before the direction came out, if you really think about applying for an international student visa after the 408 or 485, has always been the case anyway. We always have to be
Absolutely.
cautious about whatever the subjects you're trying to enroll for, how is that relevant to your employment, or how is that relevant to your previous qualification? That has always been a center of the issues for us to deal with whenever we apply for the visa. So, but then I think what this direction has done is they have made it more obvious in the black letter law, like because it was in a direction now, as opposed to these things were already happening in the past,
Yeah.
but more in the underlining
What
like
they used to
unwritten
say.
law, you know what I mean? Yeah. So this was already happening anyway, and that was the area of issue for us to deal with it when we write a GT statement for the students, or when we help them, ascertain what course fits them well and all that kind of stuff. So the other component they will be also scrutinizing is the person who has held one or more student visa in the past.
Similar to what it was before.
Similar to what it was there before,
Yeah.
but again, it's more reiterating the fact that this is what we're looking at it
Yeah.
at the moment. Now, while assessing the application, the new arrangement, I mean, when I say new, I kind of feel a little bit skeptical about using the word new, because really there's not much changes when it comes to assessing the visa application.
Right.
So if, let's talk about the first component, which is the applicant's circumstances in their home country.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So this is similar to GT requirement before. So overall circumstances in their home country. So if you're applying for an international student visa from overseas, so what are you doing back home? Like, what did you study back home, right? And what sort of job you're doing back home? What sort of employment you have secured back home? So they need to look into all of this, and mainly the main component they're looking at in this sector, it's like this particular section, is why you're not doing this particular course in your own home country. You know what I mean? So I can see that this particular course is also available in your home country, but then you picked Australia as opposed to studying this particular course in your home country. So really, when it comes to ascertaining the circumstances in the home country, they're predominantly looking at your motive. You know what I mean? Like what is that really driving you to come to Australia and pursue this particular course, as opposed to just doing it back like in your own home country.
Right, and also for the viewers to have the clear understanding, this particular component we always used to have as one paragraph of statement on GT statement with previous student visa criteria anyway, but with this new direction they're more vocal about it, and they've written in black letter law.
That's right, and it's more clear. Like it's more clear about what exactly that you're looking for. What we are looking for, what's your motive to come to Australia, but then more so than that, why you can't do this in your own home country or any other country, to be honest. So that's what they're looking at. The second component they're looking at is the nature of the applicant's personal ties, but again, this was already there before, like in the family ties, and then the asset ties, their employment ties, whether or not there is a job available for you after finishing the course in Australia to go back and pursue your employment in your home country. Economical circumstances. So when we're talking about economical circumstances, they're mainly looking at a financial component, like whether or not you can sustain your education in Australia, whether or not you're financially capable enough to invest that money into your education in Australia and be capable of sustaining yourself, and that there's actual the numbers associated with this, which we're not going to discuss today into the nitty-gritty, but I think I'm just going to talk about the high-level changes in law. So another motives could be like if you are in a military service or has a political and civil unrest in the home country. These are all components that the immigration will be looking at to see whether or not your country is stable, in terms of political stability, in terms of civil, if there's any civil war or anything like that. Because what tends to happen is majority of the people will use international student visa as a gateway to come to Australia, and they have actually abused the international student visa to apply for other visas to stay here permanently in a temporary visa. So the whole concept was to stop people being on a temporary visa permanently, and that's the whole migration strategy for 2023.
This is how they have actually implemented the whole story of this, and just so that our viewers are very clear, the whole motive, what I have understood of this first particular component, this is one student visa holder to use that purpose for the student purpose, study purpose, and utilize them for their future needs.
That's right. And the next component is the potential circumstances in their home, like in Australia, the applicant circumstances in Australia. So they'll be looking at what are they studying, right? What are they studied, and what's the employment they're doing, and also the intended course. How's that going to add value to their career aspiration when they finish the course? So rather than focusing, like the GT was more focused on how are you going to take away this particular qualification back home?
Yep.
Whereas you need to be more focused on yourself rather than how you're going to take it back home. So now the main changes is how you will be gaining that advantage of studying that particular course in Australia, and they will be looking at the, your knowledge in that area. Like for example, if you're picking some subjects to study, then why you wanted to study this course, and a lot of time, I mean, immigration has potentially conducted some interviews with these applicants, and sometimes applicants have no idea about what course they have applied for, which university, because majority of the job is actually done by the agent. So I think this is the time for the applicant to be more aware about what are they doing in terms of living in Australia, what are the intended course, and whether or not they have a sound knowledge of Australia overall, and whether or not they have a sound knowledge of the education providers, and what was the purpose of taking this particular course, and what's the living arrangement like. And the main part the government has focused is about the fake marriages. So the people have got into relationship just to apply, just to secure a visa. So they have clearly stipulated this time they're not gonna, tolerate something like this. So they basically say fake dependent visa and intentional marriage visa, like to apply for a student visa in order to just to get the visa, but then the relationship is not genuine. So they're really scrutinizing, and hence there is, and as you can see before the direction as well, there has been a lot of refusals for international students dependent visa, which is, we call it as a secondary applicant. There has been a huge refusal rate, and you can see where that all coming from.
And I think that's ongoing. That's a major issue that's going out. And with the particular thing, I think there has been one slightest changes as well. Previously with the GT requirement, they usually used to focus on your family ties in Australia, which they haven't mentioned that point in these potential circumstances in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah. So it was kind of adversarial for people to show that they have some family members in Australia, because they will say, okay, well, half of your siblings in Australia, so I've got a feeling that you would like to stay here permanently. And we have done like many AAT cases as well, and the member has been quite direct, like I can see your family members are here in Australia. I don't think you'll go back home. But I guess in this direction, those kind of stuffs are, yes, it's a component that it is a discretionary component the case officer has, but it's not actually focused around, you cannot be here just because you have a family members permanently settled in Australia.
Great. So I think they've got a few other points in terms of changes. I'll leave it up to you.
Sure. Like I think, rather than going through each and every component, I think I'm just going to quickly talk about the primary applicant's future after finishing the course. So before we used to, as I said, before we used to satisfy how you're gonna take this course and be a value add to your country. I guess you still have to show that, but not just in your country, but we have to show that how you are a value add to any country that you go, and that includes Australia as well. So how this course will give value add to your career aspiration, and what is your goal, like what do you want to do, like that, and really that explanation is more about yourself. Again, I sort of talked about this before. So rather than talking about how you're going to contribute to the society and the country and all that kind of stuff, yes, that's a big component, but I think this is more centralized into a person. How is this person will gain that particular qualification, the value of that qualification from Australia? How is this person going to utilize it for himself in the future?
Not only in their home country, but in any country.
That's
this
right.
Could be Australia or any other country that they decided to move on.
And the good thing, this particular part of the direction says, immigration should allow reasonable chance for the people to change the career or studies pathways. You know what I mean? And this was never really sticking out on any directions. Immigration has done it before. So what they're saying is, we live in 2024, people can change course, but again, the case officer should put the reasonable hat on in relation to allowing people to change courses. It's not like, we're going back 20 years, like, if you have done certain course in the past, you have to follow the same trend. As long as there's a valid reason and you can express it properly, and this is the point you need to really explain and articulate properly, that how this course will be added value to your career pathways.
I just wanted to ask you one scenario on this question,
Sure.
because I think most of our clients usually raise this concern. So, for instance, someone who has completed diploma of business or diploma of leadership management, but they've started been working as a support worker, and now that in order to pursue their further studies, they want to change the field of their studies and would like to opt into diploma of community services or aging support, which could eventually help them to uplift themselves and become case manager or support coordinator or youth worker, whatever they could be on that field in order to uplift their profile.
Absolutely. I think as long as we can show
Yeah.
some ties, like for
Yeah.
example, your qualification relevancy in the past or your employment relevancy, you know, and that has been the case in the past as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that has been a good value add for us to win the case with the Department of Home Affairs many times. Like for example, if they've done some, you know, random business course and then all of a sudden this person's doing motor mechanic, for example, in between that, if this person has secured some sort of job in a garage fixing up the cars, and then eventually this person has actually tied up to do the particular course in Australia, it kind of makes sense because he was exposed into this particular industry, then he liked the industry and he would like to pursue further because he or she can see future in that area, right? But then again, what we would like to advise our viewers is trying to avoid, you know, like retrospect or the reversal cycle. For example, you're doing some random course before and all of a sudden you're doing some random course which is completely irrelevant to your employment history in Australia or overseas, completely irrelevant to your previous studies. I would say that is a big no-no. But again, to your question, if they have a relevant employment experience and there is a, you know, a genuine intention for them to pursue their career in that particular field because they have been exposed, they understand this particular field, they want to take it further, then yes, of course, that shouldn't be a problem.
That's great news because it explicitly mentions those little
Yeah.
things in the directions so that the applicants are more clear and their vision as well.
That's right. And look, if you're a migration lawyer, then if you're representing a case, I don't think it would be adversarial for you to actually abstract that particular component to say, we understand the immigration should allow reasonable chance for people to change the career and studies pathway, and therefore I think I fall well within that sort of direction. And it's no harm because you're kind of pointing out the case officer to say, well, it is a part of the direction that I'm following.
We have something to demonstrate to, we have something to point out to, even for the members.
Yeah. And adding up, they will check the immigration history in the past, if they have any travel history, if they have applied for any other visa in the past, if any visa has been refused, which is like a part of the question in the student visa in any way. But then that kind of is the indication whether or not this person is a genuine student who would like to come to Australia, or this person's trying everywhere just to get out of the home country, you know what I mean? So the other relevant matters is very important part, which is the last part I want to discuss today also. So I know we have a big cohort of international students who are really not educated from the beginning. So what they have done is they have just, you know, changed courses after courses after courses, so which we call as a course hooping in immigration world. So they've done a lot of course hooping and then a lot of changes in education providers, and then they have not completed the course. You know, without completing the course, they have jumped to another courses. So these are all kind of adversarial information for the authority to make a decision on the visa application, which is again not a changes as such because this was already happening in the past. But I think it's more important for international students to understand that I would like to regurgitate that, you know, satisfying your student visa condition is the topmost priority as international students. There are some tough rules for you to change colleges now. For example, you can't change any course or providers after 6 months of your principal course. You know, with that, I think a lot of things will be sorted out with this area. The concurrent CO has stopped, and we can see like why the government is making these changes, because the minute the changes comes out, we have seen that watertight solution is there, that they're fulfilling the gap.
It's all adding up eventually. Like
That's right. That's right. So, and I think you know, making that early decision about picking the right course is very important. because they will look at like similar thing, like the gap of the studies. You haven't studied for a while in Australia. Like, this is all common sense, you know what I mean? If you have breached the visa condition in the past, just because the immigration hasn't found out about it, I don't think you'll get away with it when you apply for a visa extension, because things will show in your PRISM, which is the software that generates the CRE for the international students. So immigrations are well aware about, and they're quite transparent about your study journey in Australia. So because today's topic is more around international student visa, so I just want to give a quick, tips to the international student is just follow the visa condition, to be honest.
Absolutely.
As long as you follow the visa condition, you will not have any problem in relation to conducting further studies. If you have got a very clean record of completing the course, I don't think immigration would like to eliminate those applicants. I think all the new rules, all the black letters law are sort of introduced to eliminate and fill the gap.
Yep, and also to make it much more clear in terms of the people to have the understanding of how department will assess these visa applications.
That's correct. And we don't want to make it like a short, quick TikTok video or Instagram reel on this, because it's a quite big topic to discuss about. Yes. So I know this is a quite extensive, long video. It is something for our viewers to listen properly so that they can sort of establish what are the changes that has been implemented from 23rd of March. And what are the changes that's upcoming in the future, and how is that going to impact on the visa application. So there'll be more short videos around what to do next and what are the strategies that we need to build from the beginning. But I think we just want to take you through this synopsis, and I think if you're our client, we're just going to send out the summary report that we've made in relation to these changes so that you can have a look into your email as well.
Right, so with all of these new directions coming in place, the only one thing that I didn't hear in loud and clear was where the applicant does not vocally has to say, okay, after completion of the course, I'm going to go back home and do this. But more of you have to present yourself, what that course is going to do better for you.
I think in the literal meaning, you just have to show you're a genuine student, and then it's all about you. So the central of the statement, whatever you're going to draft, is all about you. How you're going to be the person that you want to be in the future, and then how is this particular course going to add the value to become whoever you want to become in the future, and then how you're going to be relevant to the global market, and not just for you to take away back home, but it's more about how you're going to add value to Australia as well. And these are all the crucial components you can put in your statement moving forward.
Absolutely, this is a great news for I think international students as well, and to, as you rightly mentioned, to those genuine students, and for those people who are genuinely looking to study, it's not of a big hiccups for them to move on with this new policy as well. But
it's only like 485 visa holders and 408 visa holders, tourist visa holders, and obviously moving forward, the tourist visa will have the no further stay condition, which means none of the people who have a tourist visa will be able to come here and apply for another visa. That's another component we need to discuss in another video. But again, for those ones who has no further stay condition, they can still apply for this international student visa, but that will be the component for the immigration to highly scrutinize and have a look into the immigration history. So I wouldn't say it will be a blanket refusal, but then if there is a genuine evidence that suggests that you are a genuine student, to all the components that we discussed earlier, happy days.
Right, great. I think this was a great session for us to run through it, and also for myself to have a catch up with all those readings. So thank you, Nish.
No worries. Well, thank you, Kosal, for all your questions. But I think Kosal was more representing the client and their questions, and I was just more like firing out from the legislations and the general understanding. I don't want to use too much of a legal jargon, just because I want to make sure that it's connecting to the layman. The terms that I'm using is for the layman, so they can understand and they can absorb and then make a right decision. So look, for anything else, we're here. You can make a booking, and we'll be more than happy to assist you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.
See you soon.